The air crackled with urgency at Third Army headquarters. A signals officer, face flushed, burst into General Patton's command post. He clutched an intercepted radio transmission, its highest classification level, reserved only for Eisenhower and a handful of top commanders, glaringly clear. "Sir," the officer stammered, "this wasn't addressed to Third Army. You're not technically cleared for this information." Patton, a man of raw instinct, snatched the message. His eyes, already sharp, narrowed as he read. Then, that predatory grin his staff knew all too well spread across his face. "I didn't hear that," he rumbled, his voice low and dangerous. "And you didn't tell me I wasn't supposed to see this." He spun to his operations officer. "Get me 8th Corps. We're moving now." Within hours, the Third Army was executing a maneuver that was unauthorized, uncoordinated, and utterly unknown to Allied command. Giving Patton information, even by accident, was the same as giving him permission. This is the story of how George Patton intercepted classified orders meant for others, acted on intelligence he wasn't supposed to have, and launched operations that horrified his superiors, but achieved results that redefined the campaign. It lays bare Patton's core philosophy. Forgiveness is easier to obtain than permission. And in war, speed trumps protocol. It also explains why Eisenhower and Bradley spent half the war trying to control Patton and the other half being grateful they couldn't. August 1944. The Allied breakout from Normandy was an astounding success. Patton's Third Army had torn across France with a speed unseen in modern warfare. German forces were in chaotic retreat, but a massive problem loomed: logistics and coordination. With multiple Allied armies, American, British, Canadian, French, advancing simultaneously, Eisenhower's Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, SHAEF, struggled to coordinate movements and allocate precious resources. Every commander clamored for supplies. Every commander had a vision for the next attack. Eisenhower had to balance these competing demands while maintaining strategic coherence. So, SHAEF developed operational plans at the highest levels, issuing classified orders only to Army Group commanders and above. Corps and Army commanders, like Patton, received their orders through proper channels, filtered down the command structure. This made perfect organizational sense. Too much information going to too many commanders would breed confusion. Operational security demanded limiting who knew what, but it also meant subordinate commanders sometimes missed the big picture, receiving orders to do X or Y without understanding the broader strategic context. Patton hated this. He believed commanders performed better when they understood the overall plan, when they could seize opportunities and exploit them without waiting for permission. He also suspected, correctly, that some operational plans were being drafted by staff officers who'd never heard a shot fired in anger. Men making decisions based on maps and timelines rather than the brutal reality of the battlefield. So Patton did what Patton always did. He found ways around the rules. Third Army had excellent signals intelligence. They routinely intercepted German communications, but their radio operators also happened to pick up Allied military traffic that sometimes included high-level operational orders transmitted between Chef and Army Group headquarters. Technically, Patton's signals personnel weren't supposed to decrypt or read Allied traffic not addressed to Third Army. That would be violating protocol, possibly even illegal. Patton's view? If it's on the radio, it's fair game. The specific incident that became legendary happened in mid-August 1944, as the Falaise Pocket was forming. SHAEF transmitted crucial operational guidance to the 12th Army Group, Bradley's command, regarding the planned encirclement of German forces in Normandy. The order meticulously outlined which forces would advance from which directions, where they should halt to avoid friendly fire, and how the pocket would be sealed. The order was encrypted, of course, but using codes that Allied signals personnel could easily decrypt. It was meant to be secure from German interception, not from other Allied units. Patton's signals officers picked it up. They brought it to their commanding officer, who brought it to Patton. The message contained information that fundamentally shifted Patton's understanding of the operational picture. Specifically, it revealed that other Allied forces were being ordered to halt at certain positions to avoid accidentally engaging Third Army units, meaning Chef expected Third Army to be advancing farther than Patton's current orders specified. It also revealed that Bradley was exercising caution about closing the Falaise Pocket too quickly, concerned about coordinating with British and Canadian forces advancing from the north. Patton read this and immediately saw an opportunity. If he pushed his forces forward aggressively right now, before Bradley issued formal orders, he could reach key positions faster. He could close the pocket faster, trap more Germans, and fully exploit the enemy's confusion. His staff officers pointed out the obvious problem. "Sir, we're not supposed to have this information. We can't act on orders that weren't issued to us." Patton's response was classic. "What orders? I didn't receive any orders. I'm just exercising initiative based on the tactical situation. If my forces happen to be exactly where Schaff wants them, that's good military judgment, not insubordination." It was pure Patton logic, technically plausible deniability combined with aggressive action. Patton immediately began moving forces. He ordered 8th Corps to advance toward Argenton, a key town on the southern edge of where the Falaise Pocket was forming. This wasn't a minor adjustment. This was committing thousands of troops and hundreds of tanks to a major movement without authorization from Army Group headquarters. If Patton was wrong, if the intelligence was outdated, if plans had changed, if he'd misunderstood the situation, he'd be concentrating forces in the wrong place, wasting precious fuel, creating coordination nightmares, possibly causing friendly fire incidents with Allied forces. Worse, he'd be doing it based on intelligence he wasn't supposed to have. That would be a court-martial offense. Intercepting and acting on classified communications intended for other commanders violated multiple regulations. But Patton had calculated the odds. He believed, first, that the intelligence was current and accurate. Schaff's operational plans made strategic sense given the situation. Second, that speed mattered more than perfect coordination. The Germans were trapped and confused. Every hour of delay gave them time to escape or organize counterattacks. Third, that Bradley and Eisenhower would forgive the transgression if it worked. They might reprimand him privately, but if his unauthorized advance led to victory, they couldn't punish him publicly. Fourth, and most cynically, that even if he was caught, he could claim he was just showing initiative, that he happened to make the right moves based on his reading of the tactical situation. Pure coincidence that his forces ended up exactly where Schaff wanted them. His staff was terrified. They were complicit in using intelligence they weren't supposed to have. If this went wrong, careers would be destroyed. But Patton was serene. He understood something his staff didn't. In war, success forgives everything. Failure condemns everything. The question wasn't whether he had permission. It was whether he'd win. Third Army units began advancing at a pace that shocked everyone, including the Germans. Within 24 hours, American armor had reached positions that Bradley's staff hadn't expected them to reach for days. Towns marked as objectives for August 14th were captured on the 12th. Bradley's headquarters noticed. Phone calls were made. "Why is Third Army so far forward? Did we miss an order?" Patton's response was masterful evasion. I saw an opportunity to exploit weak German resistance. I assumed that's what you wanted. Should I halt? Bradley was in a bind. Patton had done exactly what the larger operational plan required, just faster and without authorization. Telling him to halt now would squander the advantage he'd gained. But Bradley also realized what had happened. Patton had somehow learned about operational plans meant only for Army Group commanders. He'd acted on intelligence he wasn't supposed to have. The intercom conversation was reportedly tense but brief. Bradley, over the radio. George, how did you know to advance toward Argentan? Patton. I didn't know anything, Omar. I just attacked toward the sound of guns. Good tactics. Bradley. Don't give me that. You knew exactly where you were supposed to be. Patton. If I happen to be where you want me, that's good generalship, not insubordination. Bradley had to make a decision. He could recall Patton, investigate how Third Army obtained unauthorized intelligence, possibly court-martial people, or he could accept that Patton had once again achieved results through questionable means. He chose pragmatism. Fine, you're there now. Hold those positions and wait for British forces to close from the north. Patton had won again, but the incident created lasting controversy about Patton's methods and the command structure. Eisenhower learned about the incident through Bradley. His reaction was reportedly mixed: frustration and grudging admiration. Patton had violated protocol, but he'd also accelerated the encirclement of German forces in the Falaise Pocket. The incident raised uncomfortable questions. If commanders could intercept and act on orders meant for others, how could Chef maintain operational control? How could they coordinate complex multinational operations if subordinate commanders just did whatever they wanted? Some staff officers argued for stricter communication security, encrypting even inter-allied transmissions so thoroughly that only intended recipients could read them. Others argued that Patton should be formally reprimanded, that allowing this behavior encouraged other commanders to ignore the chain of command. Eisenhower ultimately did neither. He couldn't afford to hamstring communications between headquarters, and he couldn't afford to sideline Patton, who was winning battles. Instead, he had a private conversation with Patton. The exact words aren't recorded, but the message was clear. I'm grateful for the results. Don't do it again. And if you do it again, make sure it works. Patton apparently replied something like, Ike, I'll always do whatever wins battles. If that means occasionally reading messages I'm not supposed to read, so be it. Court-martial me after we win the war. It was quintessential Patton, acknowledging no real regret while making clear he'd do the same thing again, if circumstances warranted. This wasn't an isolated incident. Throughout the European campaign, Patton repeatedly acted on intelligence or orders he wasn't officially supposed to have. Sometimes he intercepted radio traffic. Sometimes he had conversations with officers from other commands who mentioned plans in confidence. Sometimes he simply made educated guesses about what Schaff was planning and acted as if those plans were already approved. His philosophy was consistent. Better to act decisively on incomplete authorization than to wait for perfect permission and lose the opportunity. This drove his superiors crazy. Bradley spent enormous energy trying to keep Patton on a leash. Eisenhower had to balance Patton's results against the chaos his methods created, but they couldn't deny the effectiveness. Third Army advanced faster, captured more territory, and destroyed more German forces than any comparable Allied formation. Part of that was Patton's aggressive leadership, but part of it was his willingness to act on information and opportunities that other commanders would wait to have officially authorized. Modern military analysts debate whether Patton's approach was brilliant improvisation or dangerous insubordination. The truth is probably both. In Patton's defense, warfare at that scale and speed required initiative. Waiting for orders to filter through proper channels often meant missing opportunities. The German army was collapsing. Speed and aggression mattered more than perfect coordination. Against Patton, his methods created real risks. Friendly fire incidents, logistical chaos, units advancing into areas where other Allied forces expected to operate. These weren't theoretical problems. They happened, and people died because of coordination failures. When that signals officer told Patton, "You're not cleared for this," he was technically correct. Patton wasn't supposed to see that order. He wasn't supposed to act on it. He was supposed to wait for proper authorization through the chain of command. Patton's response, "I didn't hear that," perfectly captured his approach to military command. Rules were guidelines. Permission was optional. What mattered was winning. History suggests Patton was right more often than he was wrong. His unauthorized advances, his convenient misunderstandings of orders, his timely interceptions of intelligence, they produced results. Third Army's record speaks for itself. But his methods also reveal why military organizations need structure and discipline. If every commander operated like Patton, wars would devolve into chaos. Coordination would be impossible. The casualties from friendly fire and logistical failures would be catastrophic. Patton could get away with it because he was Patton. Brilliant, experienced, and lucky enough that his gambles usually paid off. Lesser commanders trying the same tactics would likely cause disasters. The lesson? Exceptional circumstances sometimes require exceptional measures, but only exceptional leaders can get away with it. If you enjoyed this look at Patton's questionable command methods, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment. What other controversial military decisions should I explore? Thanks for watching. Remember, breaking the rules is only brilliant if it works. Otherwise, it's just insubordination.